Okay, let's jump into the topic of reinventing your career. And we'll look at the questions that were submitted earlier. And then so we got Richmond, BC. So as more people join, we'll get into the conversation. So one of the first questions that I get about reinventing my career is that, hi, I want to get a job, but I haven't worked for many years, and how can I start to work? So one of the things that a lot of people are nervous about is when they have that gap on their resume, or they have that gap in the LinkedIn profile where they haven't worked for a while, and how do they reinvent themselves, and how they get back into the job market. And so one of the biggest things that I advise people to do is to get into volunteer work. And if you have a skill that you can also freelance before you get back into the job market, sign up on Fiverr.com, on Upwork.com, and sign up on one of these freelance sites and start to build your skills, start to respond to clients, and start to deliver value. And then you do the same thing by volunteering either on a nonprofit board. And as in the months that you're looking for a job, you're building back your confidence, you're building up your skills. And then the third area that I recommend that people also do is to look at taking courses. What jobs are you looking at? What are the skill levels that you need? What is missing? And then start to amp up those skills and take those courses. And as you're reaching milestones and taking those courses, LinkedIn is a great place for you to share. When you've completed a course, you say, hi, I just completed this course, I completed this certificate, and I'm building up my skills as I'm searching for this opportunity. And so one of the major things that when you have a big gap from your job is to start to build up towards your plan, because it's going to take you a little longer, like 3 to 6 months, for you to find that job. So if you want to reinvent yourself, you have to look at what are the skills that I need, and what are the areas where I can get some volunteer hours in so that I can put something on my resume. And then when you volunteer, you also get some references that can speak to your work. And then if you're doing something that you can do as a freelancer, then you also start to build up a client base, build up testimonials for somebody to speak to your work. You can share on LinkedIn, and you can share on your profile. So these are some of the ways that I recommend if people have a big gap and they want to re-enter the workforce. These are the things that you need to start to build up before you get back on applying for jobs. Now let's look at the other questions that we have about reinventing your career. So there's another question that people ask a lot about career reinventing is about age. Someone is asking, so what advice would you give to someone who is 35 and up the age bracket? Do you think that age affects my approach to reinventing my career? So the question is, does the age that I am make a difference? And if I want to reinvent my career and launch my career into a new field or into a new skill? Now, one of the things that age can be is more of an advantage sometimes than a disadvantage, because you have to look at what your transferable skills are, what area you've been in. I had a conversation recently with a client who is an art teacher. She studied art in school, and she was an art teacher for about 10 years, and now she wants to pivot into graphic design. And so she's taken a graphic design course, and she's applied for a number of roles, and she's getting rejected. She's not getting a call back after she interviews. And one of the things that she was missing is an elevator pitch, a way to be able to sell her 10 years experience as an art educator and make that translate over to graphic design. Having a course and just having a course is not enough. Looking at entry level is something that people will be questioning. Why is someone looking at entry level roles when they have 10 years of this experience? And then downplaying the amount of years of experience that you have. You need to be able to do a personal SWOT analysis. Like, look at yourself and look at what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, what your opportunities are, and what your threats are. Now, I have a video on YouTube about how to do a personal SWOT analysis. And then the second thing is, after you figured out out what are my strengths, what are the skills that I can take to a graphic design job. As an art teacher, what are the things about teaching art, having that eye level, having that detail, being able to manage students, being able to manage a curriculum, like what industries can I take that in? And so if you're looking into going into graphic design, maybe looking at doing graphic design for schools. So rather than maybe applying for companies, looking at the graphic design department in schools, because you have 10 years of experience teaching, so you have a knowledge of the educational system. So those are the kinds of things that you can tie your experience in a similar area, and then look at a similar industry and look for the role that you're looking for within that industry. And that is one of the things that I believe that people can say that I have 10 years experience doing this. And so if I have 10 years experience in education, let me look at roles that I'm looking for to change my career within the educational field or within nonprofit organizations that run educational programs, because you're coming with an experience of an industry with limited experience in the actual technical skills. And then again, signing up for freelance gigs and volunteering, you continue to build credibility when you have a portfolio of work, either as a freelancer or either as a volunteer, that can speak to your ability to change your career. So that's another question that we got. And then the third question that we have is about the tools. So what tools do I think are like effective in assessing one's strengths? Now there's a lot of assessments online that you can do. There's also LinkedIn courses that you can take to get the LinkedIn verified badge. Facebook is also offering some courses. So when you are building your skills and building your credibility for a new role, a new career that you're targeting, making sure that you have done these assessments on LinkedIn. And some of these tests are very difficult. Like I considered myself a whiz at PowerPoint. I took the LinkedIn PowerPoint test and I didn't pass. So you realize that if you are learning something new and you want to be able to build that credibility, take those tests on LinkedIn, prepare well for them, and then when you get that verified badge on your LinkedIn profile, it boosts your credibility. And then you brush up on interviewing skills as well. Interviewing is something that a lot of people who, when they don't have experience in a role and they go into an interview, usually that's when I start to see that people fall off, because they go into the interview not having a lot of confidence. And so there's so many tools out there for you to actually video yourself interviewing, and it gives you feedback. And I have a blog post about tools that you can use to and personality tests that you can take for assessments, and tools that you can use to review your resume. And there are so many tools online. So Strengths Finder is one, and then taking 16 personalities is another one. There's also a MAP test, an MAPP test. And so if you check out our blog post about personality assessment tests that you can take, it can help you to find out what your strengths are and what skills that you need to build up as you're trying to reinvent your career, especially in these times where having those verifiable skills are very important. Okay, so we have a nice little group here. I've answered a few questions that I got submitted. Does anyone have any question about reinventing your career? You can send your question in the comments, or you can press the button that has the little question mark and also type your question for everyone to see your questions. And while you think of some questions, I'll look through some more of the questions that I got earlier to see if I can keep answering questions. Okay, I have another question here about networking and the importance of networking and reinventing your career. Now, when you're reinventing your career, your resume speaks, it knocks on the door. Basically, if your resume goes through to the hiring level, you get your screening interview. If you do well, you get to the next level of the interview. And then when they start to compare you, against someone else that has more experience than you, and especially with the pandemic that we're in, they've got job losses starting to happen again. That's when you start to drop off, because they're comparing you to someone who's more experienced in the role versus you who are making that switch, and you who's trying to reinvent yourself. And this is why networking is very key. Networking can get you past the screening phone interview of the HR to the hiring manager. It gets you with that extra credibility, because you're networking your way through a new role or a new career path. You're joining industry organizations. If you want to move into a project management role, you want to move into business analyst role, you want to move into a communications role, there are these networking bodies that exist. There are these conferences that are happening. There are these thought leader meetup groups that are happening. You want to start to join these groups and build credibility and meet people in the industry that you're looking to move into. They will tell you what they have done, what worked for them, what are the schools or what are the courses that you should be taking, what really matters. Because as you talk to some of these people, you think that, I need to get all these certifications. And they're like, no, certifications are actually not that important in this particular role. Experience is more important. So rather than spending money on very expensive courses, I spoke to someone who was saying that just take a simple $200 course, take a 1-day course or a 2-day course. Don't spend thousands of dollars on the sort of the bigger, massive courses, but then try to build a portfolio of the work. Try to freelance, try to volunteer, try to meet people, try to talk to people. And then once you get your story out there, you have your strong elevator pitch, then you're able to meet with people who can speak to your skill level and speak to the difference or the unique perspective that you bring in the interview. And so networking is something that I strongly encourage people to try. It's actually getting easier to network with people over the pandemic, because before you would have to ask someone to go to coffee, take some time out of their day, and now it is easier for people to have a virtual chat with you or Zoom chat with you, but people also are getting overwhelmed. So it's important that you give them plenty of room, plenty of time, and a number of different options when you're reaching out to people, either on LinkedIn or you go to some of these conferences and someone very interesting that you want to connect with them afterwards, you say, when can you meet within the next month? Or some people are like, I want to meet with you next week. You need to give a little bit more time, because there's a lot more networking going on because we're living in a virtual setting, and Zoom fatigue is a real thing. People are fatigued with Zoom, so give people ample time and ample room for them to connect with you virtually, and continue to attend a lot of these free events. Eventbrite is one of the places that I recommend that you go to. Meetup is also another place to join similar groups and networking with people, and then making sure that when you do reach out to them, you give them options, you give them plenty of time to either network with you over the phone, maybe over an email, sometimes then maybe over Zoom. So give them options of where they feel most comfortable meeting, what channel that they want to use to connect with you. So that networking is one thing that can really help you when you're reinventing your career. This is an interesting question from May. When changing careers, one of the challenges that they face is rejections, especially the silence rejection, the crickets. What is the advice on how to handle silent rejections? So I'm just going to answer this question quickly, and I've seen one question come through in the chat. So silence rejections, that usually comes from when you're sending these generic applications to an application system, and you either get an auto-generated email that says, sorry, we've decided to go with another candidate, or will not be moving with you at this time. And then there are even some bigger application systems that don't even say anything at all. You don't hear from them for months, and so you just advise yourself that you didn't get the job and you go about your merry way. And one of the ways this can pile up is when you start to apply, you start to think, oh, I need to get more applications in. I'm not hearing from enough people. Some people think you throw everything at the water and then one thing will stick. So people start to apply for several jobs. Some people are sending 20, 30, 40, 50 applications a day. And hiring managers and recruiters have been doing this for years. They've been reading resumes and reading cover letters and application forms for years. They're able to spot it when the person is applying out of desperation. They're able to spot when someone is just applying for applying's sake, and they can tell that the application is not customized, the resume is not so customized for their role. People want to hire people who genuinely want to work for their company. People want to hire people who genuinely want the job. They don't want a case where they hire someone and then a few months later, or a few weeks later, they leave, because one hiring is actually making an investment in you. So you also have to tone it down when you get to that place of silence. You can take that time to reevaluate your strategy and ask yourself, what is working? What is not working? Where do I need to go? I'm feeling stuck right now. And that's where you can seek out some of these settlement services, employment services. You can seek out services like Start, Grow, Pivot, where we'll have a one-on-one session with you and try to figure out and look at your application, look at your LinkedIn profile, your whole entire package, your personal and professional branding, and tell you that, let me see how you're doing this, and let me see how you're interviewing, let me see how you're applying, because it looks like you don't have a strategy. It looks like you're just applying into any and every job, and you might need to strategize your job applications better, and more is not always more. Sometimes quality is better than quantity, and that is how you can start to not have a lot of the silence and the crickets, and sometimes you even lose track of where you apply, because you're just applying to so many and so many and so many. So you need to sometimes bring back and take a step back and look back at your strategy, and how am I going to tackle this job? How am I going to do this? What are some of my backup roles if I'm applying for this particular role in these particular industries or these types of companies, and start to really dissect what is really going on and why you're getting the silence. And if maybe you're applying to companies that don't update their hiring, or you're applying to companies that have been really hit by COVID. So you need to really take a step back and re-strategize, and that would help you take back control of the hiring. And when you realize that you have the power, you'll start to be able to deal with rejection better, because you understand that you're really taking your time with your applications. All right, we have one question that came in. What are the top challenges in making a career switch during a pandemic? Now, during a pandemic, there's some industries that have been really hit by COVID. Some industries like the travel industry, like the hotel industry, hospitality industry, and a number of retail and non-essential retail industries. And so many people are struggling to either pivot to online. They're struggling with the cost of PPE. So you have to look at more industry-specific research. So you're gonna have resources that you can go to, like Randstad, like Job Banks Canada, and actually look at the industries that are really growing, so that you can be more strategic about your application. Like, am I applying to where the jobs are? How competitive is the jobs that I'm looking into? You need to do a little bit more market and job market research. And so that's a main challenge, is that there's a lot more competition as well. So you need to be able to stand out, and you need to understand the industry, understand the market. So one of the top challenges is the market is now more competitive. There's a lot of companies that are open to remote roles. So whereas if you were applying to a Vancouver company, you would be mostly competing with Vancouver people. But now people are more than willing to hire people who are all over Canada, and sometimes even outside of Canada. And so it's become more competitive. So how do I stand out in this more competitive environment? And that's one of the challenges. And then understanding what are the industries that are really hardest hit and what are the industries that are growing. And you have to do a little bit more research, and that is a challenge. There's a lot of information out there, so you have to really deep dive and do a bit more research. And then also with interviewing in a career switch is something that it's a skill. Interviewing and building a case and making a case for career switch is harder for you because you don't have those situational analysis and those stories, because a lot of interview questions are tell me about a time when, or tell me about a time when you worked on this project, or give me an example of this project that you've done. And if you're making a career switch, you don't have as many examples of something that you've done in the past or examples of something you've done within a company. And so you have to either use coursework that you've done or maybe speak to volunteer work that you've done, which is not as valuable as having direct experience. So that's another challenge. And so that's where I encourage people to really learn how to interview, how to give good elevator pitches, and how to tell their story, and how to position themselves online so that they can really deliver a strong personal brand that will attract recruiters to you. So I hope I answered that question. What are the top challenges in making a career switch during the pandemic? Do we have any other questions from the group? What are some of the resources I can use to research a new industry? I mentioned some of them. So one of them that I really like is Randstad Canada. And then another one is Job Bank Canada. So Job Bank Canada is primarily for newcomers, but it has a great resource. In any, you can check any industry, any job title, any role. It will let you know which provinces actually have a need for these roles, like what you need, what your requirements are. It's a very, very robust job search system. Another resource that you can use is Glassdoor. Glassdoor allows you to research companies and also research industries as well. And then LinkedIn is also a great resource for researching company news, industry news, following the companies, following the industries, following the sector. You can follow news and tailor your LinkedIn news so that you keep abreast and keep on top of all the latest industry news in the industry. So those are some of the resources that you can use to research. Do we have any other questions for the group, or we can just wrap up and then I can direct you to some of the resources that we have at Start, Grow, Pivot. Check out our blog where we have blog posts about career reinvention. We have blog posts about networking. We also have a YouTube channel that you can check out to get how to network, some of the do's and don'ts of networking, how to build your elevator pitch, and then how to prepare for interviews as well. And then you can also go to the link in our bio if you're looking to book a free career discovery session with me. And we also have some paid sessions, some workshops, and career strategy sessions also. So check that out in our link in our bio. And it was really, really nice spending time with you this evening and answering your questions about reinventing your career and making a career switch in these pandemic times that we're living in. I need to clear my throat, need some water. Thank you all so much. Oh, I got one more question. How receptive is Canada to American skilled workers doing a career switch? Well, this one depends. It really depends on a lot of things. So it depends on the skill. If it's a skill that is highly specialized and highly skilled, you can apply. There's Canadian companies that have American offices, so they can help situate you either in their American side, or if you need to get your work permit, depending on the job and depending on how interested they are in your candidacies, they can sponsor you, or they can prompt you to apply for apply on your own for a work permit program. That was our last question of the night. Thanks everyone, and bye-bye, and we'll see you in 2 weeks where we'll have a guest on our FAQ Monday.